Note that M1 is the only non-technical video in the series. Back a half century ago plus, when I became a registered engineer, there were no ethics courses or exams required, and some would say we had no ethics. But I'd like to outline what I believe from my perspective is fair to clients, contractors, and suppliers. And by the way, having been in sales, manufacturing, and consulting, what each says about the other two is absolutely true. Now, best design approach is how would I do it if it was for myself, uh, knowing what I know. But then you have to feed in the requirement of client or management. Now, most of the time, these are fairly minor items, and certainly they're entitled to make them comfortable. If they do override you on a design approach, then they also have to take responsibility for it. Um, in some ways, it makes it better because you don't have to worry about that piece of equipment or what it design working. If it is a significant issue, then advise client management and have something on file. People tend to forget. And if it is a really significant issue, morally obliged not to seal any drawings or specifications. Now, fairness to contractors and suppliers, even if otherwise directed by manage, is the only fair way to go, obviously, and only open tender or sole source. The most important factor in driving safety is attitude. This is also the most important factor in engineering design. Now, just to throw in a little light, hopeful humor here, is this little bit here, and that's part of it, and that on a similar vein, bringing us to standards. And some people want to treat these as absolute gods, and unless somebody senior dictates that they are, um, they're strictly intended as guides, like AWWA. The use of AWWA standards is entirely voluntary. Similarly, American Standard, American National Standard, is intended as a guide to aid the manufacturer, the consumer, and the general public. They're not intended to be the Bible, dare I use that expression. Now, some of these things you find in these standards can be ill advisable and not very good. Others can sometimes be used as a general guide. Now, a camel is a horse designed by a committee, and of course, standards are created by committees. As a footnote, Sir Alexander Arnold Constantine Izagonis was a Turkish automotive engineer who ended up in Britain and ended up being responsible for the design of the Mini, Mr. Bean's car, transverse engine, front wheel drive. Now, in terms of procuring equipment, there's two approaches. The best is overall contractor responsibility. In other words, they look after everything, and that avoids fights between them. And they think issues will happen. You have one person to deal with here or one outfit, and that's the way to go. But sometimes you're forced, due to long delivery on some equipment, to pre-order it for the owner and then provide it to the contractor. Um, and that can be a bit of a fight because you can get caught where they start pointing fingers at each other. There have been, I've seen it, a contractual offense to somehow have the contractor responsible for owner supplied equipment. But this is an unreasonable and unfair and really unworkable in the long term. Under approved equipment, I like to approve both the equipment and the equipment supplier. There are times when I think I prefer to have bad equipment with a good supplier than good equipment with a bad supplier. And open tender strictly by specs is messy. I honestly think the way to go is to list pre-approved equipment and the supplier related to it. Because you always have situations where somebody isn't on the list and wants to be, the phrase alternate materials may be substituted by the contractor only if substitutions have been approved in writing by the engineer does allow for the review and possible acceptance of equipment. I have cheated it a bit. If somebody has supplied equipment with all sorts of information that I consider to be really good, I will tell them, yes, it will have to be submitted after tenders close if your pricing is good. But you can tell the contractors if that happens that I will approve it. Okay, another important thing. Appreciate you can always contact factories directly for advice or a second opinion. since you're not an employee or a distributor or anything at all, they can't fire you or cut you off. And it's the best way to go. Now that's it for professional considerations and just a little footnote of how to find the other stuff if you need to.